It's chill time right now. There we go. It's live. Hey there, everybody. I think my lag. I think there's some lag here going on, but is what it is. We're just gonna chill right now. Make sure that everyone can get in, kind of get comfortable a little bit. Grab some coffee. We're not doing games over popcorn today. We're going games over coffee. We've got some people in the chat. SJN Comics is here. Awesome. Any place but here is here. Nice to see you guys. I'm going to go ahead and explain the structure of today's stream. So today's stream, we're going to be talking about one of these games, which I'll explain later on. But what we're going to do is the same thing that we did last time, which was I'll be going through chat first, just as an open discussion, kind of chill, get everybody inside. And then once we're, I don't know, about 3-4 minutes in, I guess, we'll go into our explanation. I'll go ahead and turn off the chill time, and I'll talk straight to the camera here, and I'll ignore you guys completely. And then I'll talk about my first impressions of the game. And then we'll get into an open discussion. If there's any comments that you guys had about my first impressions, positive or negative, we'll get into a little discussion if you want. And then right after that, we'll get into the developer's intentions, and I'll talk about the answers that they had, answered my questions with. And then after that, we'll get into another open discussion, and then we'll end it from there. So I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit longer than 35 minutes before. That's what last time it was. So we'll see if we can get longer than that this time. So we're 102 right now. We're just going to wait just a little bit for other people to come in if they want. See who's all here. I'm always hesitant to provide these with I invited the developer last time to the stream, but I like to have like the videos like nice and concentrated for them when I give them the information, so I don't have all this extra stuff in there. So I'm hoping that this one will be good. But okay, well, anyway, there's some people here. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So welcome. This is Games Over Qualia. My name is Devon. Let's go ahead and get started here. This is Hovershot we're going to be talking about. Let's turn off chill time. Boom. Okay, this is Hovershot. Once it gets a little... Come on. Here we go. Level 1. There it goes. Okay, so this is Hovershot. This is developed by Yaniv. I don't know if I'm saying that name right. It's Yaniv. And let's go ahead and just talk about what this game is. So this game is if you see it, by the way, pause like that. That's the game itself. It has like this kind of, it's still in development. So anyway, Hovershot by Yaniv. So the game is a very easy to explain game. You are a spaceman of sorts that is floating around in the space looking area. I don't know what you would call this, but you're floating around in there, and you have a gun, and you can shoot, and every time that you shoot forward, you recoil backwards. And the whole point of the game is to navigate, shoot enemies, and find the exit through these like kind of maze-like interiors by shooting. So you're just using your recoil to go around the whole area. So it's a really interesting game. There's a few other games that I've seen that have a similar kind of mechanic. It's not specifically like this one, but like even I think about Asteroid. I think that arcade game, or the I don't know if it was on arcade or Atari, but anyway. But yeah, Asteroid comes to mind. There's also there's that platforming game. It's a puzzle platformer called No Time to Explain, which I haven't played, but I've heard it has that kind of same mechanic in it. So anyway, it's a really fun game. I really liked it. It's it's so silly. I really like some of the design in here. I love the aesthetics, the music, and everything. It's a lot of fun. But I want to get into my first impressions of it. I should say that the game, by the way, has the whole structure of the game is kind of like a roguelike. kind of game. So you have randomized layouts of levels, and then as you play the game, you unlock, or you don't necessarily unlock, but you find weapons throughout the whole area. And so you'll find a weapon, then you have either two weapons on you, or you can have upgrades that have like, make you have three weapons. There's a bunch of different upgrades you can find throughout the area. I don't think you're ever awarded upgrades, except for the beginning, which is it's still finding. Everything's about finding. So anyways, so it's a really interesting game, but I want to go ahead and go into my first impressions here. So this is like I said, it was a really fun game, but I wouldn't say it's designed to teach at all. This is really interesting, and we're going to get into my favorite subject, which is game design. So yeah, when someone plays this game, immediately I think they're going to have fun. They have a lot of, really strong feedback in this game. When you're playing it, you automatically understand what's happening. You can shoot forward, you get flown backwards, and it immediately clicks. You go, oh yeah, I want to shoot over here and fly over there and, use the quirky mechanics to get around. It's really funny. But I remember playing the tutorial of this game and thinking, this game is it's like the tutorial itself, it's easy, but it still demands my attention. I had to really focus hard on the tutorial. And when you complete the tutorial, it kind of makes you feel like, well, that was an easy level, but what's next, right? It doesn't really feel like it's a tutorial. It doesn't really feel like you're being handheld, which, some people might like, but it definitely doesn't feel like a tutorial. It felt like a easy level. And I think that speaks to the game's kind of design language, if you will. When playing the game, it never feels like I'm being taught anything. And I know that sounds kind of strange for someone who's not into game design, but if you think about what games do, what games are meant to do, games are meant to teach people how to play. Unless you're doing things, not all of them. Okay, I won't say all of them. Not all games are made to teach how to play. Most of them are. A lot of them are. My favorite ones certainly are. I'm not saying this one should. There's just a lot that are, and this one does not. Some of the things that we talk about when we talk about game design is meant to teach people is the design in which they're being done. So one of my favorite examples is Banjo-Kazooie. So if you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie, it's an N64 game. I don't remember what year it came out. 97? No, later than that. I don't remember. Anyway, N64 game, and it's a collectathon, and people call it a collectathon. What a collectathon is it's just collecting a lot of things, and that sounds kind of boring, but when you play a game that's quote-unquote designed for that kind of stuff, it makes a lot of sense. So what Banjo-Kazooie does really, really well is it has its levels kind of made so that the player goes along the levels and they start collecting things, but it feels fun to collect, and it feels like it's the point of the game. And how they do this is if you imagine how you are playing Banjo-Kazooie, it's a 3D world, and there's a big area, and you go over to see I don't know, a bridge somewhere, and you walk along the bridge and you're like, oh, hey, there's an item there. I'm going to grab that item. And while you're looking around there, oh, there's an item over there. I'm going to go grab that item. And I wonder what's over here. And you go around and you find something else. And you're like, oh, hey, there's something else. It's this sense of continuously pushing the player toward finding things. And it sounds kind of silly, but when you're, actually playing the game, it makes a lot of sense. It's this kind of thing that we call a gameplay loop, right? Where someone is playing the game and the point of the game is coming through as they play. So that's really interesting, and I've always liked that about game design. Super Mario Bros. Is another wonderful example. What that does is, it teaches people the main thing that you do in the game, which is known as platforming, right? When you can run and you can jump, that's platforming. And when you're running and jumping in that game, you would think, okay, well, that's all you do in Mario. You just run and jump. That's kind of obvious. But not really. If you were to make a game where a person just runs and jumps, what kind of enemies would you say you would put into that game? Now, because Mario is a staple and it's very historic, everyone kind of understands exactly what I mean when I say enemies inside of Mario. People can picture that in their mind, like, okay, if I'm making a game like Mario, I'm going to make enemies in which you hop on them. But that's not always the default, right? If you think about Bubsy, Bubsy is a game that does not have that. I mean, well, it does have that, but I was thinking of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog does not have that. Bubsy has that in a different way. So if you think about Sonic the Hedgehog versus Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. Is made for a specific type of experience. So the player starts running with Mario and can jump, right? And that's the whole point of the game, is to run and jump. And when you have the enemies there, what you're trying to do is tell the player, hey, you need to run and jump to vanquish these enemies. So that's what you do. You have Goombas, which the only way to vanquish them is to hop on them, right? You have your Koopas, which are those little turtle guys, and you can hop on the Koopa in order for them to go into their shell. And now you have another thing you can do, which is either hop on them again or approach them from either side. Sonic has a different kind of thing, but it still speaks to the same kind of teaching kind of thing, where the player is trying to go forward as fast as possible. And in Sonic the Hedgehog, you can go as fast as possible. And whenever you get to an enemy, you don't hop on them. You can just hit them in any direction. And what that does is it preserves your kind of momentum, right, as you're going forward. So that kind of thing, where you have enemies that kind of, teach the player and kind of show the player, this is how you should be playing the game. That's kind of the thing that I'm talking about here. And when I brought up Bubsy, Bubsy does not do that. Bubsy actually moves a lot like Sonic, and his mechanics with the enemies are meant to be more like Mario. So if you imagine how Sonic goes really fast, then you come over to like an enemy and then you just hit it and it just kills you. That's what Bubsy is. Bubsy, you have to hit the tops of the enemies even though you're going very fast. That's a very strange game. Anyway, what we're getting down to here is the idea of the core experience, or the core gameplay loop, as we call it. And in this game, Hovershot has kind of a core experience, but it doesn't really seem interested in teaching that core experience to its player. So what I would say the core experience probably is in here is just to shoot, to navigate, and not necessarily to shoot to engage. It feels like those two kinds of things that you're doing are kind of fighting against each other, specifically because when you're shooting in this game, it sends you backwards. You can see in the gameplay that I'm typically using my shots to try to get out of the way from other enemies. It's a difficult thing to have, the main thing that you're doing in the game, shooting enemies, but also the main thing that you're doing is trying to get around the enemies, and you're doing it at the same time, and they're not exactly the same. And I think about games like Enter the Gungeon or Hades, where you have a character who moves around, that you can do things at the same time, like move and shoot at the same time. And this one is just, you can't do those two things at the same time. And so I want to, ask this developer what the core experience that they thought they wanted in this game. What was the fun thing about your game that you made it for, right? When you made this game, what was the thing that kept bringing you back? And that might seem a little unfair to people who know what this type of gameplay is. Because to me, what this kind of gameplay is feels like what I would call a simulation-like type of game. And that's different than what I was talking about, which is designed games. This game could be this kind of simulation type of game. What a simulation type of game is where you have just things that you can do within like a sandbox type of area, right? Just a big open area, and you can just do stuff within that area. And you can then use those skills to do other things. For example, in a game like, let's see, trying to think of one. I don't know, how about Gary's Mod? Gary's Mod is just basically a big sandbox where you can just do a bunch of things. You can shoot in that game, sure, but it's not necessarily the thing that you're going to be doing, right? Most of it is building stuff. You can think about Minecraft, I guess. In Minecraft, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing that's just kind of an open world that you just do a bunch of different things. And no part of Minecraft is the single core experience. You are, mining for sure, and that, the whole point of the game, I guess you could say, is to find, collect, and build, right? That is kind of the stuff that you're doing in Minecraft. But a lot of it is just it's presented in this kind of open kind of area where you're not really guided. There's no design, there. And so in the same sense, I would say that this game, Hovershot, has that kind of simulation kind of feeling to it, where it feels like when I'm playing the game that there's a bunch of elements that just kind of exist, but for some reason it's being pushed into this kind of designed kind of structure, I guess you could say, of the game. And it's very odd to me. So some of the things that makes me think that this game wasn't really designed, but then might be, I'm not exactly sure, as the enemies themselves. There's some enemies that have some interesting designs in here. You have ones that, follow the player, but the player has to shoot at the enemy. But at the same time, when you're being followed and you're being shot backwards at the same time, it feels a little weird, especially if if they're following you and then they stop and you're just continuously shooting, because your bullets have decay times, which means that if you shoot a bullet, then it stops at a certain point and it just disappears. And of course, the more you are shooting, the more you're going backwards, which means the less your bullets are traveling. So it kind of feels like it works against you at that point. There are other enemies that are designed really intentionally, so it seems. There's one that has a giant shield on the front that protects it, and then it's vulnerable from the back. So it makes you think, oh, I should get around the enemy and shoot them from the back. But the enemy turns at the same speed that you move, so you can't. And sometimes you can if you're sneaking up on it, but it turns pretty fast. And then its shield can break. And I find that really strange. So this is the enemy, by the way, that I just showed right there. But yeah, the shield can break. And if, that kind of just makes the whole the whole strategy of getting around it kind of null, right? There's also an enemy that has a giant spike in its stomach that feels like some kind of mutant, and it moves really, really fast. It just kind of stays there for a second. It's like a sentry, right? Sentry. It stays there for a second, watches where you are, and then as soon as it finds you, then it shoots towards you really fast. And that doesn't seem fair in this respect, because you can't move very fast. And so the only thing you can either do is you try to move out of the way, which is difficult, or you can shoot at it. And you can kill it if you have a powerful enough gun. But if you don't, then you're out of luck and you're just going to get hit. It's one of those things that it's just really strange to me that these enemies exist just for them to exist. It doesn't feel like they're inviting any kind of core element. It doesn't feel like it's telling the player to do anything, and this is what I mean by the design structure of the game, where it doesn't really feel like those, Goombas in Mario, where it says, hey, you need to jump on us, that's what I mean by design versus simulation. There was some other things I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what they were. But I'm going to go ahead and check out the comments of you guys, see what's going on here. So, are you playing it right now? Nope, this is pre-recorded, as you probably have guessed. Reminds me of oversimplified corporate graphical gameplay, or graphical style. Oversimplified corporate graphical style, but more pleasant and less annoying. I would say so too, yeah. Are those little yellow thins the enemy drop Twinkies or something? Those little yellow elements that you're seeing are money, and that's this whole thing I think is very it's still very much in development. So the yellow things are just things that you use to buy stuff later on. Let's see, going down here, you say, happy to catch a live stream. Bless his channel. Thank you, Tactical Mindscapes. You're awesome. It's pretty impressive how classic of a formula they made for the first Mario Bros. Yeah, most definitely. I love how great Miyamoto thought through all of that kind of design work. This game also looks like a game called Shot for the Stars. I have not heard about that. It does look through the physics simulation is essential to be grasped if you're going to master this game. It's a very, very hard game to master. The game does not feel like it's intuitive, aside from the shooting part, but moving around is weird. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that I had experienced in this game. So some of the things that caught me off guard in this game was the whole idea when you're moving around is that you don't want to get hit by the enemies for sure, but you also can't get hit by the walls. You don't want to send yourself colliding into a wall because it'll hurt you. And what's really neat about this is if you think about that aspect of the game and you try to reverse engineer it into creating a character that makes it feel as if you can, as if you can't do that kind of stuff, what would that character look like? I think about the game. It was a new game. I mean, it's kind of new. What is that game? That skating game, Skate Story. That's what it's called. In that game, it's so neat because your skater is made of glass, and it tells you immediately, I should not fall off my skateboard. Right? That's without even playing the game at all. You just see that, and you're like, oh, I definitely shouldn't fall off my skateboard. Shouldn't do that. I'm made of glass. In the same way, you look at the character in this game in Hovershot, and your head is not a human head, right? You are a goldfish inside of a little glass bowl, and it makes you think, oh, I should not hit the walls very much. And it's really cool that they have that. You have two types of health in this game. You have your body health, which degrades when you get shot, and you have your head health, which also can get shot, but also you don't want to slam against the walls. So you have to be pretty careful about moving around in here, and it requires a whole lot of skill when you're doing that. One of the things that you have to do, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but this is a strategy that I've seen other people do, including the developer, as far as I remember, if I've seen his gameplay. I put this game into the Discord for a little bit to see if there was anyone who would play it, and there were some people that posted their gameplay, and I was very, very grateful for them. What they showed was something that I was suspecting, which was this strategy of going toward the walls. What would happen, I'm doing this because there's a wall right here, going toward the walls. What would happen is, like, whenever a player would do that, they have to twist their body so that their feet hit the wall. And it turns out that that's actually a mechanic that the developer had wanted to reinforce, and they're not reinforcing it, I don't think, in any way, really. The only way that I know that they're trying to reinforce it is because there's an upgrade that lets you bounce further from the wall by using your feet. I didn't even know that that was something that they were trying to push, but it does seem so now that I look at it. But yeah, you have to rotate your character a little bit in order to hit the wall. What's weird about that is that it's a 90-degree angle that you're rotating because you're shooting forward and your feet dangle from 90 degrees from it's a right angle that you're shooting from. And so because of that, what you're doing is you'll shoot a whole lot. You'll go backwards, and then you'll end up going to a wall, and now you have to rotate yourself 90 degrees so that you stop, and then you rotate 90 degrees again, and when you go shoot some more. And what's weird about that is it feels so arbitrary. And I think it is arbitrary. I think what happened is the developer put this into the game and they felt like, oh, you know what, that's pretty cool. I can do that. I'll go ahead and add some upgrades for the player to do that. But I don't understand the reason as to why it's there, other than it just feels like it's there in the game and it just exists as something that you can do. And there doesn't seem to be anything to reinforce that other than that little upgrade. And that goes for everything that you do here. There's a strategy that I had in this game where I would shoot at a 45-degree angle in order to run circles around my enemies. And it didn't really help all that much, but it was a good strategy for me. And this is like, I'll get into this a little bit later. There's a specific type of mechanic that I want to talk about. But yeah, it was weird to have a bunch of those things just kind of existing here within the space, and it doesn't feel like any of them are acknowledged. So that was something that I wanted to talk about here. So going back to the chat, before I get onto the dev's intentions, I wanted to just talk about this, just see if there was anyone else that had any more comments. We say, let's see, I feel like you can pick this up and start playing very quickly, but also fairly quickly start to wonder why you would keep playing it from watching so far. Yeah, it's one of those things that I figured when the player would play the game, I could imagine, I could see giving this game to a friend of mine. They would play it for a little bit and go neat and then walk away. And that's kind of it. And it's because there's no I guess, challenge progression. There's no kind of skill progression here. And that's kind of the thing that I, was really talking about, I guess, with the simulation idea. Let's see. What if bullet hell, but control was super hard? Yeah, basically. I'm digging the movement mechanics a ton. It's really creative and yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That could be its own game. In fact, the game, what's the game called? Oh man, I had just said it prior. It was No Time to Explain. That game uses only recoil to move around. It's a very different game though. It's a puzzle platformer. So you're looking for consistency between gameplay, story, art design, looking for causes of the effects seen during the game. That can be easy to overlook. I'm glad you're talking about it. Thank you, SJN Comics. I would agree. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my gameplay here is... Let's see, where's my gameplay? There you are. Yeah, we're almost done because I'm about to die here. I've got 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and restart that. Okay, so I want to get into the dev's intentions here. So I need to bring up their intentions. So let's every time that a game developer submits a game, I go ahead and ask them 3 questions. That's kind of the point, of this whole thing, is that someone has to answer 3 questions about the intentions of their game. I then play their game and then compare my first experience with their intentions. So we're going to look at their answers. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to my beautiful face. Okay, question number 1 was, what were you hoping that the player would feel while playing your game? Their answer was, I wanted the player to feel a mix of curiosity, tension, and satisfaction. Exploring the world, learning its mechanics, and slowly mastering movement and combat is meant to feel rewarding. I also hope the atmosphere pulls the player in and makes them want to keep going, even when things get challenging. So there's your answer. My second question was, why did you choose this experience? Their answer was, I chose this experience because I love playing games with interesting mechanics and challenging gameplay. I enjoy the feeling of discovery, where each small step forward comes from understanding the game a little better. I wanted to create a game that delivers those same feelings. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that one. Question number 3 was, what were the specific moments, mechanics, or ideas that you built around that emotional goal? Their answer was, I wanted to create curiosity and exploration through mechanics that are unusual, so players have to experiment and learn. The game has random weapons and abilities that players need to figure out, and different enemies that behave in unique ways. Tension comes from battles, which require focus, and satisfaction comes from beating a boss or a level, doing something clever with the mechanics or weapons, unlocking a new ability, or discovering fun weapons. So, that's interesting because I wanted to talk about the way that they use the word learning in there. We'll go ahead and come back here to the gameplay. So learning is a huge thing in game design. And I think the way that the dev is talking about learning here is a little different than the way that I would typically hear the term used in this subject. Whenever someone talks about learning, it usually implies teaching. What I imagine this dev meant is discovery as opposed to learning. So yeah, you can learn the game, overall, all of its mechanics. If you're just playing the game over and over and over and you start to learn lots of the game's quote unquote idiosyncrasies, then it makes sense that you would build your own kind of understanding of the game and you would start to learn it a lot more. But if I'm thinking about learning in terms of game design, I'm thinking about trying to understand the mechanics in the way that the developer wants you to understand them. And this is a difference between 2 things that are very, very different in games. And this is the type of thing that the player does in the game. So let's think about a game like Rocket League. In Rocket League, the whole game is cars that are playing soccer, right? That have big fat jet engines that you can use to rocket all over the place. And the idea of that game is just very easy. You just, run into the big soccer ball and try to get it into the goal on the other side. But there's been a lot of things that people have understood about the game from playing it so many times that they start to understand the game at like a meta type of level, and they start exploiting the game's mechanics. They start exploiting the systems and the themes that are involved in order to do things that the game developers never intended. And I'd say that's this kind of discovery that's happening. This is something we call emergence. And when when you see that happen in Rocket League, we have now like meta mechanics, things that happen within that game that people have done that developers have never intended, like the air dribble, which is really, really strange. It's when a person can take the soccer ball and they can fly with the ball across the air and put it into the net. It's like something insane to do. And I've seen people do this when I play the game. There's another, other types of emergent mechanics would be like in Super Smash Brothers when we have wave dashing, right? Wave dashing is a crazy thing where you're exploiting the animation frames, the canceled, quote unquote, canceling animation frames of the characters themselves in order to utilize that as movement. And I've done this because I used to be a big Super Smash Bros. Head. But I would, doing a little, it's called down canceling, this kind of thing where you are trying to, you're trying to get away from a person without really doing, I guess, a bunch of animation frames all at once. I didn't get too much into it, but those are, these types of mechanics that developers had never really intended. And I'm wondering if, quote unquote, these unintended mechanics were intended from this developer for Hovershot, because it seems like what they want to do is they want the player to kind of learn the systems through their own discovery and kind of just produce different types of strategies in order to deal with the world that they've created. It's really strange to me, but that is something that can happen for sure. And this is why I kept kind of comparing this to a simulation type of environment, because it feels like that's what the developer is saying here. We have this fun world that he just wants people to go into and learn all these really weird things and then take advantage of the systems and try to understand the systems at a personal and expressionist kind of level and just kind of do things the way they would want to. And it makes the game really interesting, but it also makes the game really, really hard to master because there's nothing really that the player is being pushed toward. There's no skill that the developer is saying, yeah, this is what you should be doing here in the game. It's interesting because these types of, physics-based movements and mechanics and everything, the things that happen in this game, they can be taught. It's not like they can't be. And this may be, not what the developer is interested in, but think about games like Half-Life 2 or Portal, for example. Those games have, physics types of movements that are not necessarily things that you have to do in order to get around. Like, for example, in Half-Life 2, there's different sections of the level where you can use your gravity gun in order to move objects around the room and whatnot. And, it's kind of just shown to the player that, hey, you can use this physics stuff in a specific way, but you don't have to use it this way. It's just kind of, nudging the player toward a certain direction. For example, there's a moment I remember in Half-Life 2 where you're coming down a little hill, you bump into, this has nothing to do with the gravity gun, but it is physics-based. You bump into a little barrel, and the barrel rolls down the hill, and then it catches on fire. And then when the barrel is on fire, it happens to run into these big tongues that are hanging from the ceiling, and you realize that they're monsters and that they have some sort of trap there. And so they suck up the barrel, and then it explodes and dies. And it basically shows the player an example of something that could be happening. They say, hey, this is something that you could do. You could push these explosive barrels into these, monsters and make them blow up. Portal is another great game that shows this kind of stuff where it never really tells the player how to use the portal gun very specifically. It says use the portal gun to do certain things, like, you can move your cube from one place to another, but it never says, push the cube through the portal at this angle at this moment in time. It never does that, right? It's just kind of giving the player these kind of puzzles with this open-ended kind of thinking, that they can just tell the player to acknowledge these things, I guess. A lot of these systems I would call creative, right? In a game like Tears of the Kingdom, you can have these very, very open-ended type of systems where the player doesn't necessarily have to do anything specific, but in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, there are times that you have to understand how to play the game. One of those things being the Ultra Hand. And when you're using the Ultra Hand in order to move things around and then like glue things together or fuse them together, something like that. When you're moving things around and gluing them together and whatnot, the game, can guide the player into certain areas. So, for example, there's some in the very beginning of the game during this tutorial kind of area, you are moving through this area that needs to get you from one side to another and on these floating islands. And one of the times that one of these things that happens is there's this big kind of zip line looking thing. It's just a line that goes from one area to another. And then it shows you these little metal blocks that are just right in front of it. And the little metal blocks have the little hooks on them. And the player goes, oh, the hooks should go onto the zip line and I'll use that to ride it. They don't have to do that. They can just walk on the zip line if they wanted to all the way down. They could make something else entirely, right? They can make their own angle and put it on. But the point is to give the player this kind of skill, like imply that there isn't a skill, imply that there is a skill for the player to use in order to get from one side to another. And I think you could do that in Hovershot, right? I think you can make the player realize that there are things that they can do through a bunch of different things. You can do them through, creating your levels in a certain way or creating your enemies in a certain way to tell the player or imply that there are certain behaviors that are expected from the player in order to, progress forward. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this game. I want to go to the comments here and see and open this up for discussion. If there was anything that I was unclear about or that you guys wanted to comment on. This stream was about the same length. That's too bad. I was hoping to do it a lot longer this time. Let's see. This you guys said you are looking for. Let's see. Meta mechanics reminds me of players stacking up Halo 2 multiplayer, jumping and then getting extra jump height by jumping off the other player's heads. Yeah. Yeah, Half-Life 1 and 2 are great examples also of show don't tell sandbox games for sure. Yeah, this game I think could use a lot of that type of same things within Half-Life 2, where the game is basically just showing there's the game itself doesn't really have quote unquote levels, because Half-Life 2 is basically like a story type of game and narrative that's happening, but they're split off into different sections, even chapters, I guess. And during those chapters, they have these open kind of areas that are kind of like mini sandboxes. And within those areas, they give the player, very specific tools, like I said, with the barrels and the tongues or the soda can, right? The soda can and the little trash can in front of the guard. Moments like those where you have, these sectioned off little areas where the player can mess around with the things that they have and just kind of figure out what kind of skill they should be building going forward. Those things are really, really good to have, and I think they're great. I think this game could definitely do that. Could definitely use those kinds of things. I'm now looking at my gameplay and I'm like, man, this this was a really hard game to do. I'm also realizing that I'm talking with my hands a lot. So that is everything that I have to say about this game. And thank you so much for joining me here. All you guys, I really, really appreciate you being here. I hope to do these streams a lot better in the future. Like, I really want to talk for longer and kind of have, I don't know, a better discussion of all these things. I tried to switch up my language here to be a little bit more approachable instead of design oriented, but we'll see what happens when I edit the video. But anyway, this whole game, I just want to end with, I really, really enjoyed this game. I thought this was so much fun. I really loved the absurd weapons that you have. I really liked how using them to get around all had different ways of, recoiling. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, that is everything. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for watching. I will edit this video and I will be releasing it, I think on Friday. No, Friday? Thursday. I'll release it on Thursday. Might be fun to see you play a bit of the game during the stream. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I could actually do that right here. Why don't we try that really quick? I'm going to try that. Let's see if I can open up this game. I'm going to do something live for once. Look at that. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Let's see here. We've got Hovershot. There you are. And let's see if I can get OBS to cooperate here. Let's see here. We're going to go here. Okay, OBS, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's say I'm going to add a source. It's going to be a browser, I guess. Oh, my bad. No, that's not it. That's not it. Get out of here. All right, let's try. I don't think there's a window capture. That's too bad. Oh, there's I guess there's screen capture. I can do that. Okay, you guys are going to see my desktop here. So you're going to see OBS. Oh no, wait, window capture. Oh, hey, I can do that. Look at that. Chrome. Where's Chrome? I shouldn't use Chrome. Here we go. Boom. All right, let's try to get this small enough. And let's get this in. All right. How's about that? Yeah, how's about that? Boom. Okay. So yeah, let's try this. Oh, I don't want the audio. Or maybe I do want the audio? I don't know, is that too loud? I don't know. Live stream says, what do you guys say? My stream, where's my stream going? There it is. That's not what I want. There we go. All right, we're gonna try this. I love the music in here. All right, what is this? We've got life capsules. Oh yes, I do want that. So the weird thing is that I have to like hold. I don't necessarily have to hold the button to shoot, but it feels like it's faster to get around. Oof, man. I really don't like the distance of these bullets. I mean, they're fine, but this feels a little short to me. I played this game quite a lot when I was researching it. Oh wow, there's a weapon right there. Usually I don't see weapons for a long time. What is this? A missile launcher? I've never seen that before. Let's see here. Oh. All right, very nice. I love the stupid goldfish. Oh, this is great. I'm trying to bring up my chat here and I can't do this at the same time. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, you have to reload these. I forgot. Jeez. Oh, man. This is difficult. This really reminds me of Rick and Morty. The type of explosions that they have. Hey, and there's our portal. Alright, fam. I think that is all I'm going to be doing of that. That was fun, though. So, thank you again for joining me. And yeah, is it my stream? Is my stream doing it? Is my stream's doing it? Okay. Good sound design. Yeah, it is good sound design. I really liked the sound quite a lot here. Thanks again, guys. I will talk to all of you another time. Peace.